You feel it in your bones before it happens, a quiet invasion so subtle you barely notice the moment your heart begins to throb with someone else's sorrow. This is your gift and your curse. As an empath, you carry the weight of 1,000 souls in your chest, a symphony of unspoken grief that threatens to drown your own heartbeat. Beware, unchecked, your compassion becomes a razor that carves away your own spirit. You stand at the edge of your own boundaries, feeling every tremor in the emotional landscape around you. When a friend's laughter turns brittle, you taste the residue of their pain on your tongue. When a stranger's anger flickers across a crowded room, your muscles knot before you even understand why. You think this is love. You think this is power. But without vigilance, it is poison. You have learned to hide in plain sight, smiling as you absorb afflictions that were never yours to bear. Yet each wound you carry seeps into the hidden corners of your psyche, inviting shadow aspects to take root. The martyr who sacrifices herself until brittle, the rescuer who must be needed to feel alive, the scapegoat who thinks her suffering redeems everyone else. Underneath your ego begins its quiet revolt, desperate for recognition, demanding applause for your endless giving. There is a silent drama playing out behind your chest, a war between the persona you present, gentle healer, wise confidant, and the shadow you refuse to integrate. Carl Jung warned that the unloved shadow becomes the tyrant in our inner kingdom, a dark sovereign that controls us through fear and guilt. When you deny your limits, that tyrant seizes the throne, whispering that your worth depends on how much pain you collect. The anima and animus dance within your soul, each playing their part in this tragedy. Your anima, vulnerable, intuitive, draws you into the currents of other people's destiny, while your animus, rational, boundary-loving, pleads for a fortress of solitude. Torn between the pull of community and the need for self-preservation, you drift like a vessel without a helm. Each encounter becomes a gamble. Will this person's anguish enrich your capacity for empathy, or will it drain you until your light flickers? Modern trauma theory speaks of hypervigilance, an empath's radar for emotional threats. But what good is it if every gentle glance becomes a siren warning? You scan the horizon for dangers that may spring from the cracks in another's heart, convinced that your sacrifice will keep them afloat. Stoic masters like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius taught that we must distinguish what belongs to us from what belongs to the cosmos. Yet you absorb it all, convinced that your heart is large enough to hold the world's sorrow. Ego projection further complicates the scene. You paint your unhealed wounds onto those you serve, assuming their shadows reflect your own. When someone lashes out in jealousy or despair, you interpret it as confirmation of your deepest insecurities. You become both detective and culprit, hunting for evidence of your unworthiness in every interaction. This distortion anchors you in a cycle of guilt for feeling too much guilt, for not doing enough guilt, for failing to save every broken spirit you encounter. But there is hope in this cataclysm. The path of individuation begins when the empath recognizes that boundaries are not betrayals, but lifelines. You learn to let others carry their own burdens, trusting in their capacity to struggle and grow. You begin the alchemy of shadow integration, turning the lead of your pain into the gold of self-sovereignty. You forgive yourself for feeling overwhelmed, teaching your animus to hold the line when your anima overflows. Hear the echo of Epictetus ringing through your chest. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The world will always pour its chaos toward you. The gift of an empath is knowing when to open your hands and when to close your fist. Your power lies not in absorbing every tear, but in choosing which tears to touch. Each boundary you draw is a declaration of self-respect, a fortress that honors both your heart and the hearts you intend to serve. Continue along this journey with courage as your compass and wisdom as your map, and you will discover the transformation waiting within the crucible of your own empathy. You step into each encounter like a sailor guided by invisible currents, unaware that those same tides can drag you into undertows of exhaustion. You feel yourself leaning in, always leaning in as if your body is magnetized to human suffering. When someone's trembling voice reaches your ears, you lean forward. When tears stain their cheeks, you extend your hand. But every inch you give is measured against the shrinking reservoir of your own resilience. You recall the paradox of the wounded healer, the one who tends others' wounds only to find their own flesh still raw. In your zeal to mend, you forego your own repair. Your heart, porous as sea sponge, soaks up every drip of sorrow in your vicinity until you can no longer distinguish between another's bleeding and your own. You believe that your empathy saves them, yet in truth it binds you both in a silent pact, your survival tethered to their suffering. Imagine the scene from the outside. She hovers at gatherings, an aura of compassion so intense it becomes oppressive. He shrinks in her presence, feeling guilt ripple through him whenever her gaze finds his shadowed corners. They become actors in a drama. Neither fully understands the empath who gives until depletion, and the wounded, who in turn rely on her to validate their pain. This dance is codependency choreographed by unspoken needs. Your energetic boundary, once a sturdy fence, has become a sieve. You wonder why you feel restless in rooms where no one seems in distress. The truth is that calm unnerves you. It signals an emptiness you are unprepared to face. You've learned to assign value to chaos. The more turbulent the waters, the more special you feel, as if you alone can withstand the storm. Yet no one is immune to drowning. Shadow integration demands radical honesty. You must confront the truths you have long denied, that beneath your altruism lies a craving for significance, that your generosity sometimes masks a fear of abandonment. You must shine a light on the resentments you clutch, resentment for those who seem immune to suffering, resentment for moments when your gifts go unnoticed, resentment for the soul-crushing fatigue that follows. These resentments live in your shadow, festering until they erupt as bitterness. You are invited now to practice fierce self-compassion. Seneca counseled that we must grant kindness to ourselves as freely as we grant it to others. Picture yourself as the vessel of your own care. When you feel another's anguish press upon your chest, visualize closing a valve within your heart, allowing only a measured flow of compassion to enter no more than you can bear. This small act of will is an affirmation you matter too. Third-person provocation. Notice how she trembles when someone else's darkness threatens to consume her light. She tells herself, "I am the sanctuary for everyone's shadows," yet she forgets that sanctuaries require maintenance. Without tending her own walls, cracks appear, and the torrential rain of emotions seeps through. She must tend to her own sanctuary first, before opening its doors to the world. You learn the language of energetic hygiene. Just as you wouldn't store garbage in a home without routine cleanings, you cannot accumulate psychic debris without periodic purification. You carve out time for solitude rituals that remind you of who you are outside of the emotional demands swirling around you. You may wander through a forest in silence, journal until your pen hisses across paper, or sit in stillness and observe your breath. These practices are not luxuries. They are the scaffolding that supports your empathic gifts. In moments of doubt, return to Marcus Aurelius's guidance. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your empathic nature, with all its potential pitfalls, becomes your teacher. Each contraction of overwhelm signals an opportunity to recalibrate your boundaries. Each wave of exhaustion whispers a direction shorewards toward rest. Feel the transformation whisper in your bones. You are not the container for everyone's pain, but rather the bridge that helps others cross their own chasm. Your gift is not measured by how much anguish you absorb, but by how skillfully you channel compassion back into detached presence. You learn to witness suffering without taking it on, to offer a listening ear without becoming the echo chamber. This section of your journey asks you to redefine power. True strength, you discover, lies not in the unending sacrifice of self, but in the steadfast commitment to balance. It's the quiet resolve to say no when necessary, the unspoken boundary that protects your essence. It's the courage to let others face their own shadows, trusting in their capacity for growth. As you cultivate these principles, you will find your energy returning, your creative spark reigniting. The world does not demand that you carry its sorrow alone, only that you stand as witness, shining a compassionate light without being consumed by the flame. You awaken to the subtle tremor of your own heartbeat, a reminder that the world you navigate is not two-dimensional, but a vast mosaic of hidden emotions. Each face you encounter is an atlas of uncharted continents, joy, despair, envy, longing mapped invisibly beneath the skin. Your empathic gift offers you the rare privilege of reading these landscapes, but without a compass, you risk becoming lost in their contours. You begin to discern the telltale signs of emotional contagion, the way a frail whisper can tighten your chest, how a simmering resentment in one person can thunder through your veins. In these moments, you are not a bystander, but a conduit. Recognize the distinction. A conduit channels energy without holding onto it. Water flows through a riverbed. It does not vanish there. Likewise, you can allow others' feelings to pass through, transforming each surge of emotion into compassion, then releasing it back into the ether. Third-person provocation. She believed that healing meant carrying every ounce of suffering in her hands, cradling it as though it were precious. Yet she discovered that in clutching too tightly, she crushed the very gift she sought to share. She realized that letting go did not diminish her compassion. It amplified her capacity to give without losing herself. Trauma theory teaches that empathy can trigger old wounds, awakening dormant narratives of abandonment and betrayal. When you sense someone's fear, you might hear echoes of your own childhood anxieties, when security felt conditional, when love seemed tethered to your performance. These reverberations can hijack your present, implanting shadows that belong to another's history. You must learn to trace the origin of each surge of emotion. Is this sorrow mine, theirs, or a ghost from my past? Only then can you choose which currents to ride and which to let dissipate. The unconscious mind weaves complex tapestries of projection, and projection's twin, introjection. Projection casts your unwanted traits onto another, while introjection absorbs others' traits into your psyche. As an empath, you teeter between these two edges, at risk of mistaking your own pains for theirs, or vice versa. To disentangle this practice, the question that Jung proposed, who speaks? When a rush of emotion arises, pause and ask, is this mine? Hear the answer in the quiet space between breaths. Stoic philosophy offers a beacon in the storm. Epictetus reminds you that you possess the power to choose your judgments. When an emotion floods your system, label it without condemnation. This is sorrow, not mine, but observed. By naming it, you create a gap, a buffer between the feeling and your ego. In that interval lies freedom, the power to respond rather than react, to hold compassion in open hands rather than clenched fists. Notice how your relationships shift as you apply these practices. Friends who once leaned on you like a crutch begin to stand on their own. They learn that your presence is not a safety net for their every stumble, but a guiding star along their path. The dynamic changes. You become the mirror that reflects their strengths, not the cushion that softens every fall. In this new choreography, both partners learn to dance with autonomy, each step respectful of personal space. Third-person provocation. Watching her assert a simple no felt like witnessing a revolution. It was not cruelty, but clarity that radiated from her. Those who expected endless acquiescence recoiled, unaccustomed to resistance. But what they saw as harshness was actually an act of love for herself and for them, for genuine connection built on mutual respect rather than indebtedness. You might resist at first, fearing that boundaries will sever your bonds. But consider the oak. Its roots run deep beneath the earth, anchoring it firmly, while its branches soar unencumbered into the sky. Boundaries serve as roots, giving stability to your relationships. They do not imprison, they empower. With each boundary, you erect a refusal to engage in another's shadow drama. A decision to withdraw when drained, you strengthen your core. The path of individuation winds ever inward. As you cultivate self-awareness, you shed roles that no longer serve you: the perpetual rescuer, the silent martyr, the over-solicitous friend. You become the author of your own narrative, choosing which characters stay and which exit stage left. In this rewriting, you reclaim the protagonist's role in your life story. Hear the echo of Marcus Aurelius once more. Within you lies the ability to create a worthier self. This is not hyperbole, but destiny. Each act of self-care, each moment of discernment sculpts your character. Your empathic nature, once a source of pain, transforms into a refined lens through which you view the world: clear, compassionate, sovereign. As you continue this journey, you will notice a profound shift. The world no longer feels like a torrential storm, but as a vast tapestry of individual threads. You can touch one strand without unraveling the entire weave. You will find that your compassion, unburdened by excess, shines more brightly, illuminating the paths of those you choose to walk alongside. You sense a shift in the air, a subtle recalibration of your inner equilibrium. The tempest of unchecked feelings no longer tosses you helplessly. Instead, you drift on calmer waters, guided by intent rather than reaction. In this space of newfound clarity, you begin to see the hidden architecture of relationships, intricate patterns of giving and receiving, of dependency and autonomy. You realize that empathy, when wielded with awareness, becomes a conduit for authentic connection rather than a cage of obligation. Recall how the wounded healer archetype demanded endless sacrifice, urging you to pour your essence into every soul you encountered. Now you welcome a different archetype, the sovereign self, whose crown is carved from self-respect and whose scepter is the power to choose. This sovereign neither hoards compassion nor dispenses it indiscriminately. Instead, she dispenses her gifts as a queen bestows her wisdom judiciously, with the recognition that true generosity is measured not by volume, but by discernment. Integration of shadow aspects deepens here. You no longer recoil from the darker fragments living within your psyche, the envy that whispers comparisons, the pride that craves acknowledgement, the anger that surfaces when you feel exploited. You greet these shadows as lost children of your own soul, offering them the light of consciousness. In doing so, you reclaim disowned parts and unlock reservoirs of creative power. The anger that once threatened to overwhelm you now burns as a forge, tempering your resolve. The envy that once fragmented your joy now guides you towards self-improvement rather than self-recrimination. Third-person provocation. She once called herself boundless, but found her spirit fractured into shards of others' emotions. Now she calls herself whole, each shard reintegrated, each fragment honored. She stands tall, not as a martyr, but as a master of her inner realm. Ego projection becomes an ally rather than an adversary. You discern when you project your unmet needs onto another, when you read a plea for help in their silence, or assume rejection in their distance. With gentle skepticism you ask, is this truly theirs, or have I colored their landscape with my own hues? This pause of self-inquiry unravels misunderstandings before they solidify into conflict. In conversations you listen with full attention, not to catch the echoes of your own wounds, but to witness the other's unique expression. The anima and animus reach a new equilibrium. Your anima's compassion is tempered by your animus's discernment. Your animus's boundaries are softened by your anima's empathy. Together they form a yin-yang dance that pulses with vitality. This inner harmony radiates outward, transforming how others experience you. They no longer see a reservoir to be drained, but a wellspring to be approached with mutual respect. Modern trauma theory offers powerful tools at this stage. You learn to identify triggers, those invisible tripwires that stir old narratives. When triggered, you name the sensation. This is reactivation of past fear. Naming dissolves its power, like sunlight dispersing morning mist. You then employ grounding techniques, placing your bare feet on the earth, tracing the textures of a tree's bark, inhaling the scent of rain. These acts tether you to the present, reminding you that past wounds need not dictate current reality. Seneca's wisdom reverberates through these practices. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You chart your course with intention, setting daily anchors, moments of reflection, connection with nature, creative expression that remind you why you chose this path. Each anchor is a beacon guiding you when storms gather. Third-person provocation. Observe her as she reclaims her mornings, greeting the dawn with gratitude instead of dread. She no longer wakes to serve distant sorrows, but to nourish her own spirit, so that when she steps into the world, her presence is an offering, not a plea. Your relationships transform into mirrors of mutual empowerment. Lovers respect your edges. Friends celebrate your autonomy. Strangers encounter a presence that neither consumes nor withdraws. In this dynamic, empathy becomes a bridge, two sides connected by compassion, each standing firm on their own ground. No longer do you fear that your caring will isolate you. Instead, you recognize that genuine bonds arise when two sovereigns choose to meet. Ego no longer demands approval. Your worth is self-certified. Your identity emerges from inside rather than being reflected through another's gaze. You speak and act from a place of inner authority, guided by values you've chosen rather than roles you inherited. In this sovereignty, you discover freedom, the freedom to give without draining, to receive without guilt, to exist without apology. As you embrace this phase of your journey, you become a living testament to Jung's promise. When the individual integrates shadow and ego, the self emerges as a guiding center. Your empathic gift, refined by boundaries and self-knowledge, becomes not a weakness but a superpower. You stand at the threshold of your own awakening, feeling the steady pulse of your heart aligned with your true essence. The cacophony of borrowed emotions has given way to a harmonious vibration, a song composed by your own soul. No longer do you flinch at another's sorrow as if it were knives against your ribs. You witness it, breathe with it, then release it back into the world like a prayer unspoken. You carry the weight of countless stories, but you no longer mistake them for your own. When someone's grief brushes against your soul, you greet it with compassion and bow, knowing that to hold it would eclipse your own light. You have learned that empathy is not the act of absorption, but the art of resonance. You vibrate in solidarity with another's pain, then return to the frequency of your own being. Third-person provocation. She once believed that love demanded total surrender, that her worth was measured by the depth of her devotion. Now she knows that love flourishes in freedom, that devotion anchored in self-respect can transform both hearts without sacrificing either. Your energetic borders stand clear and true, no longer porous thresholds leaking your vitality into every passing storm. You have mastered the alchemy of compassion, transmuting sorrow into solace without siphoning your own reserves. When you choose to engage, you bring a healing presence that uplifts rather than a mourning halo that burdens. Ego projection. Once a treacherous labyrinth has become a mirror polished by self-awareness. You recognize the contours of your own wounds before you assign them to another's shadow. When you feel triggered, you trace the line back to its source, often a childhood echo, a memory worn thin by time, and let it dissolve in the light of your consciousness. What remains is clarity. You see others for who they are, not as canvases painted by your insecurities. In the interplay of anima and animus, you have found resonance rather than conflict. Your anima's depth of feeling is guided by your animus's discerning clarity. Your animus's strength is softened by your anima's compassion. This yin-yang dance within creates an inner equilibrium radiating outward as a magnetic presence that draws healthy connections rather than toxic entanglements. Trauma theory taught you to honor triggers as signals, not saboteurs. Each twinge of overwhelm is now a beacon directing you to recalibrate, to pause, to practice grounding. You plant your feet into the earth, Inhale the solidity of the present moment and anchor your spirit in the sanctuary of now. You emerge from each pause renewed, ready to offer empathy without overextending your boundaries. Seneca's words echo as truth. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You have faced adversity at the hands of your own compassion, endured the collapse of your boundaries, and risen again, stronger, wiser, sovereign. Your scars have become badges of initiation, reminders that your journey through the fire refines your essence rather than consuming it. Notice how relationships have transformed around you. Friends no longer come seeking a bottomless well of emotional labor. They arrive as equals bearing their own lanterns. Lovers meet you as co-creators, each holding space for the other's growth. Strangers sense an unspoken boundary that honors both your presence and their autonomy. In these connections you find the true alchemy of empathy. Two sovereign beings choosing to walk side by side. As you move through the world, you carry a presence that neither clings nor withdraws, an invitation to genuine encounter. Your empathy has become a beacon of discernment, guiding others toward their own healing without entangling them in your web. You have become the living embodiment of Jung's promise. The self emerges when shadow is integrated and ego aligned with higher purpose. Feel the freedom in your chest as you inhale possibilities and exhale limitation. Your empathic gift no longer threatens to undo you. It has been sharpened into a tool of transformation. You stand as an alchemist of emotion, transmuting shadows into light pain, into potential attachment, into authentic connection. In the sovereignty of your compassion, you become the unbreakable sanctuary that both honors your own soul and illuminates the world.